How you doing? You
Fine,
went this
good
way.
to see you. Whatever.
Okay, how you doing? All right?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
I've seen you for a while.
I've been around.
Yeah.
I've been keeping busy, running around a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'll be back in New York tomorrow at my club for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I'll be in the Riviera Hotel July 31st for a week. Then I'm going out to Green Bay, Wisconsin, to Carlton West. I'll be over there.
Yeah.
And Wisconsin.
You're busy.
It's nice out there,
Yeah.
You come from Nebraska. It's
That's
nice.
right.
Midwest is nice.
You like the Midwest, huh?
Yeah, I wish I came Midwest sometimes,
What's
All right. Midwest, I lived in a nice, small, adjusted town, I had a wooden frame house with a screen door in the back of the kitchen. My brother and sister were Marianne and Biff. And Dad was vice president of the bank, worked there for 30 years, very adjusted man, Dad, never smokes, drinks, or gambles, Then you read about these guys. One day they pick up an axe and wipe out the whole family, Yeah, the next day the cops come around. What happened here? What kind of man was he? He was a quiet man. But I've been bouncing around a lot. I've been plugging my album, a new album out, No Respect.
Right.
So it's...
Is that going well, is it?
It's going real good. It's on the charts, a bullet, whatever that means,
On the chart.
And do you hold up the backside, too, of the album?
Yes, I don't know what
you
you
show
call
the
this.
back? Yeah, it's a cute little thing there.
Now you can understand about no
You
respect.
see that? I got no respect here in California either, I'll tell you
Really?
that. I got stuck the other day, I wanted to go sightseeing. They took me on a tour of all the extras' houses.
Good morning. It is Friday, Aristotle Friday, June the 23rd, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have No Free Lunch, The Rape of the Mind, Fox, Kudlow, and that's going to be on the You Decide segment about Hunter Biden's text. Then mark-kaye, and then finally, of course, Aristotle for Everybody, Difficult Thought Made Easy by Mortimer-Adler. All that and more when I come back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing and remove your hats for the national anthem of the United States of America.
Thank you. And now there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen.
Contrast, keep on with various versions of old-fashioned monarchy or with slow or fast socialism with its betterment-killing policies protecting the favored classes, especially the rich or the party or the cousins, Bad King John or Robin Hood, in its worst forms, a military socialism or a tribal tyranny, and even in its best, a stifling regulation of new cancer drugs. And you get the grinding routine of human tyranny and poverty with their attendant crushing of the human spirit. The agenda of modern liberalism, reigned against tyranny and poverty, is achieving human flourishing in the way it has always been achieved. Let my people go. Let ordinary people have a go. Stop pushing people around. Deirdre N. McCloskey. An economic order not rooted in liberty is bound to fail, whether its stated aim is punishing the rich or rewarding the rich and powerful, because any economic order not rooted in liberty crushes the human spirit. It is when humans are free to act that society has seen vertical mobility. In all contrary systems, we are only debating about the severity of the soul-crushing results.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David-Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. Who is the true conservative? He knows that the government has no rights. He is religious. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He makes judgments, refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He's open-minded, asking why rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American. Back in a minute. Thank you. What are the true conservative suggested federal political priorities? Number 1, recognize that the government has no rights. 2, defund Planned Parenthood. 3, replace the Affordable Care Act. 4, institute zero-based budgeting. 5, prohibit collective bargaining for all public employees. 6, assign criminal and civil liabilities to all government regulators. 7, immediately repeal the Patriot Act. 8, immediately repeal all emergency dictator laws. 9, reinstate writs of outlawry. 10, use taxpayer funds to sponsor recalls, ballot initiatives, and referendums. 11, create a flexible minimum wage. 12, means test health care. 13, immediately and permanently prohibit investment banking by any office holder. And 14, make nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons obsolete. Back in a minute. Thank you. What are the true conservative cultural priorities? Bring back hierarchy. Bring back the admiration of intelligence, morality, and beauty. Bring back single-income households. Integration. Parenting. The primacy of existence. Certainty of knowledge. And universal rights and wrongs. Bring back principled behavior. Masculinity and femininity. Bring back Adam 12, John F. Kennedy, the gold standard, pre-HMO medical care, and nonprofit news. Bring back civil service, the term stupid question, arguments and fights, the cultural influence of the church and the Boy Scouts. Bring back the influence of social organizations such as the Lions Club and the Rotary Club. Bring back bowling. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of Mark-Kaye.
Ron DeSantis, who is a very popular governor, very, very popular. Here in the state of Florida, everybody loves Governor Ron DeSantis, but they love him as governor. And it's an interesting phenomenon that the more he campaigns, the more money he raises, the more people see him, the more he talks to, the farther down in the polls he seems to fall.
I think from his kickoff to even his disastrous trip to Nevada this weekend, the more people see and hear about Ron DeSantis, the more his numbers go down. I think his super PAC has spent upwards of $20 million now, and Ron DeSantis has lost about 20 points over the last couple of months.
And in the latest poll that just came out, Donald Trump continues to grow, gaining 3 percentage points since his indictment. Ron DeSantis falling in the polls. Donald Trump clearly is the winner.
President Trump has a lock on the Republican nomination because, and this is from our recent polling, 95% of Republican primary voters believe that American men and women were better off financially under President Trump.
Ron DeSantis.
So that was very interesting. Mark-kaye on Ron DeSantis versus Donald Trump and how Mr. DeSantis is falling in the polls. And perhaps, as it was suggested in the beginning, maybe again because more people like him as governor than the idea of liking him as president of the United States. But we will see. Again, Mark-kaye. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the rape of the mind.
The breaking point in our capacity for frustration. What is the straw that breaks the camel's back? This is a key question in the problem of personal morale. During the Second World War, I treated a fighter pilot who was unafraid of his dangerous work, but who felt unhappy about his personal relationships. Suddenly, during an air raid alert in London, where he was on furlough, he was struck by utter panic. In normal life, he had been a rather shy and withdrawn young man. Unexpectedly, he found himself in a shelter with a frightened group about him. He became contaminated by the fear of other people. The strange situation found him unprepared, and so he broke down. I mention this point to show again how contagious the atmosphere in a POW camp can be. No one can really tell how he will behave in times of great danger until it comes to actually facing the test. The true test of reality is solved in different ways. Many accept the challenge. Some over-defensive, compulsive individuals even welcome the danger. Still others, who are already unstable, misuse the new situation as an excuse to break down and let their emotions go. Segal calls the last group frustrated big dealers, seclusives, dupes, scared kids, praise-starved egotists, all having egos that could easily be boosted by a flattering inquisitor. In psychology, we are aware of the fact that there are two sets of determinants which bring on mental breakdown. One set consisting of long-term considerations which cause a gradual breakdown of inner defenses. The other consisting of short-term factors, the triggers or provoking factors, causing a sudden collapse of the mental and physical integration. To the first set of factors may belong a chronic disease or the many chronic irritations of life. The second operates by means of a sudden symbolic impact on hidden sensitivities. A mouse appearing in a girl's class doesn't arouse panic because of its objective danger. Modern psychopathology has studied the manifold sensitizing occurrences experienced in early life, which make people subject to unknown trigger reactions. Yet, trauma and frustration are emphasized too much as weakeners of the personality during its development. As a matter of fact, the opposite is true. Challenge and resistance to unfavorable influences make the personality. In order to develop greater inner strength and better ego defenses, the individual has to expose and traumatize himself. What else is fair sport and fair competition but repeated training in morale? Physical training doesn't have to be soft. The self-traumatization by trial and error to which we unconsciously expose ourselves in encounters during sports is part of a spontaneous effort toward self-discipline. When the person cannot find strength within himself, he must borrow it from his neighbor and look for strength by proxy. Too great emphasis on dependence or leadership increases this proxy mechanism. Leadership is not exclusively the secret of morale. Identification with the leader may sometimes fortify the person's inner strength, but it may also frustrate his capacity to grapple with his own problems. A frustrating leader may decrease our capacity to tolerate frustration. Living under too soft circumstances is probably a weakening factor. A recent publication, Richter, on experiences with men under combat stress, and later with rats in the laboratory, have proven that luxury in general influences negatively man's capacity to endure. Somewhere along the line, good morale means no longer being afraid to die. It means solving that mythological anxiety about death being something dark and obscure. And it means the willingness to accept fate. Accepting fate and duty and responsibility is living in a different way. It is living with the moral courage to stand for moral principles that you have gathered in your life, without which life is not worth living. The anticipation of bad occurrences can have a paralyzing effect. If one expects people to break down, they may either give in more easily to these false prophets, or out of hostility, feel boosted in their morale. The press, the radio, and television have to be aware of their subtle responsibility as morale-influencing mediums. It is important to realize that mental prophets expect more panic in others when they themselves feel jittery and insecure. In the last war, there were many sensational forecasts of panic that, happily enough, did not materialize, such as Dunkirk. Man is often mentally much stronger than we expect him to be. Of all the animals, he can suffer most and take danger best, provided he does not weaken himself by his belief in supernatural terror stories, nor become unnerved in a Cold War.
And that was the breaking point in our capacity for frustration from The Rape of the Mind by Joost-meerlo, MD. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, since this is Aristotle Friday, the next chapter of Aristotle for Everybody by mortimer-adler.
Chapter 2. The Great Divide. Aristotle's division of physical things into inanimate bodies and living organisms, and his division of living organisms into plants, animals, and human beings, do not exhaust his scheme of classification or his set of categories. Think, for example, of Wellington's horse at the Battle of Waterloo, or of Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon. Think of Shakespeare's Hamlet, the Loch Ness Monster, or the angel Gabriel. Think of the odor of roses in full bloom, the color of a ripe tomato, Newton's theory of gravitation, or God. None of these is a physical thing that exists now as animal, vegetable, or mineral. Wellington's horse and Julius Caesar existed in the past, but they exist no longer. Shakespeare's Hamlet is a fictitious person, not a real one. The existence of the Loch Ness Monster is highly questionable. As for the odor of roses in full bloom, the angel Gabriel, Newton's theory of gravitation, and God, none of these fall under any of the headings that cover bodies that either exist or have existed in the physical world. The universe of objects that can be thought of is much larger than the physical world, the world of bodies, either those now in existence or those that have existed in the past. It includes the world of bodies, but it also includes much else besides. The line that divides bodies from everything else is the Great Divide. What is left when we put the whole physical world to one side? What belongs to the other half of the all-embracing universe of objects that we can think about? I'm not going to try to give an exhaustive enumeration of the kinds of objects that are not bodies, but here at least are some of the possible kinds. Mathematical objects, such as triangles and square roots. Imaginary or fictitious characters, such as Shakespeare's Hamlet or Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. Disembodied or unembodied spirits of all sorts, including ghosts and angels. Gods or God, when divine beings are thought of as not having bodies. Mythological beings such as centaurs and mermaids. Minds that are able to think up the kind of questions we've been asking. Ideas or theories that minds think with. I'm fully aware that this enumeration of possible objects of thought raises many questions. Do such objects exist in any sense of that word? If they do, how does their existence differ from the existence of bodies? What does it mean to call them possibilities? Are there any objects of thought that are impossibilities? If minds are not bodies, what is their relationship to bodies? I will try to answer some of these questions, with Aristotle's help, in later chapters of this book. Some are difficult philosophical questions that I will postpone until the very end. For the moment, Asking them serves the purpose of calling attention to the larger universe, of which the physical world is but a part, even though the world of bodies may be the only one that really exists. Staying with that world, we must consider another distinction made by Aristotle. We need it to handle the question about the odor of roses in full bloom, or the color of a ripe tomato. Roses and tomatoes are bodies, they are plants, but their odor and their color are not. Considering the physical world, Aristotle drew a line that divides its constituents into two major kinds. On the one side of the line, he placed bodies, on the other side, their characteristics or attributes, such as their odors or colors. In our everyday speech, we ordinarily make the same distinction. We do not speak of the size and weight of a stone as if it were a body. I would not ask you to hand me the stone's size or weight, but I know that you must hand me the stone in order for me to feel its size or weight. We can think of the stone's size or weight without thinking of the stone, but we cannot change the stone's size or weight without changing the stone. If the stone is lying in a pile of stones, we can take it from the pile and leave the other stones behind, but we cannot take the stone's size or weight away from it and leave the stone behind. What belongs to a body in the way in which the stone's size or weight belongs to it is, according to Aristotle, something that has its existence in a thing, as the stone's weight exists in the stone, but does not exist in and of itself, as the stone exists. A physical thing, a body, may belong to a collection of things from which it can be removed, as one stone can be taken from a pile of stones. But each of the stones in the pile exists in and of itself, even when it exists in a collection of stones. That is not true of the stone's size or weight. Sizes and weights do not exist in and of themselves. They are always the sizes and weights of physical things, and they cease to exist when the bodies in which they exist cease to exist. Another way of grasping this basic distinction between physical things and their attributes is to consider how things change. A stone with a rough surface can be polished and made smooth. A stone that is almost round in shape can be made perfectly round. While we're changing a stone's attributes, we're dealing with one and the same stone. It is not another stone, but the same stone, altered. If it did not remain the same stone while becoming different in this or that respect, it could not be said to have changed from being rough to being smooth, or from being larger to being smaller. When we understand this, we understand Aristotle's reason for saying that a physical thing is that which remains what it is, this individual stone, while at the same time being subject to change in one respect or another, in size or weight, shape, color, or texture. The attributes of bodies, unlike bodies themselves, are never subject to change. Roughness never becomes smoothness. Green never becomes red. It is the rough stone that becomes smooth, the green tomato that becomes red when it ripens. Physical things, in short, are changeable. Physical attributes are not changeable. They are the respects in which physical things change. Aristotle attempted to make a complete enumeration of the attributes that physical things have. Its completeness may be questioned, but the attributes he names are ones we are all acquainted with in common experience, especially those that are the principal respects in which things change. In quantity, when they increase or decrease in weight or size. In quality, when they alter in shape, color, or texture. In place or position, when they move from here to there. A thing has other attributes, such as the relationships in which it stands to other things, the action it performs, the results of its being acted on, the time of its coming into existence, the duration of its existence, and the time of its ceasing to exist. Of all the attributes that a physical thing has, the most important are those that it has throughout its existence, and with respect to which it does not change as long as it exists. These permanent attributes make it the kind of thing it is. For example, it is a permanent attribute of salt, that it dissolves in water. a permanent attribute of certain metals that they are conductors of electricity, a permanent attribute of mammals that they give birth to living offspring and suckle their young. Such attributes not only make a thing the special kind of thing it is, they also differentiate one kind of thing from another. Being able to ask questions of the sort we've been asking is a permanent attribute of rational animals that differentiates us from other mammals. Rational animals are, of course, bodies. They are physical things, but not only physical things. We recognize this fact in our use of the word person. We call human beings persons. We do not call spiders, snakes, sharks, or birds persons. When we treat our pet cat or dog as if it were a person, we treat it as if it were human, or almost human. Objects that we regard as mere things, we do not treat in the same manner. Up to this point, the word thing has been used to refer to physical things, to bodies. Now, the word thing has been used in contrast to the word person. It is a troublesome word. Its meaning is sometimes so broad that it refers to any possible object of thought, not only to existent physical things, but also to their attributes as well, and to objects that do not exist, objects that may never have existed, and even objects that cannot possibly exist. Sometimes the word thing narrowly applies only to bodies that now exist in the physical world, bodies that have existed there in the past, or bodies that can exist there in the future. Using the same word in a variety of senses is often unavoidable. In the case of the most important words we use, especially words we use in ordinary everyday speech, it is almost impossible not to do so. Aristotle frequently called attention to the different senses in which he found it necessary to use the same word. When we think about our experience as he did, we must also pay attention to the different senses of the words we use. Human beings are physical things in one sense of that word and not in another when we call them persons, not things. As physical things, as bodies, they have the three dimensions with which we are all acquainted. As persons, they also have three dimensions which are quite different.
And that was Chapter 2 of Aristotle for Everybody, Difficult Thought Made Easy by Mortimer-Adler. Back in a minute. Thank you. So on this episode of You Decide, there's not going to be much to decide. This is about the Hunter Biden text. Apparently it's like WhatsApp or something like that, where he made a text and talking about that his father was sitting right next to him, and it was kind of a veiled threat to some business partners in China and whatnot. But nobody from CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, or the Washington Post, I've been able to find has covered it. They just haven't bothered to cover it. The only news agency that has covered this, besides foreign news agencies like news agencies in the Telegraph in England and one in Australia, is Fox News. So that's all we're going to get today. This is going to be Fox News, more specifically Larry-Kudlow, on the Hunter Biden text. Here we go.
All right. As evidence mounts that Joe Biden was deeply involved in his son Hunter's influence peddling pay-for-play schemes, there's one clear fact here. At least in the next 18 months, President Biden will never be brought to justice in a court of law. His Justice Department and his FBI will never let it happen. And it's all part of the politicized rule of law under Joe Biden. And that is why impeachment is an important issue. Unlike the Russian hoax with Donald Trump, which was a Hillary Clinton campaign ploy and where facts were made up of whole cloth, facts pertaining to the Biden scandal are coming from official Treasury banking reports known as suspicious activity reports, and more facts are coming from IRS whistleblowers and reliable FBI informants. The Merrick Garland Justice Department and the FBI are doing all they can to obstruct and suppress the Biden criminal evidence. It's a protection racket hiding what looks like a mob-type racketeering operation. And this is why House member Marjorie Taylor Greene's efforts to move the House GOP toward impeachment hearings is so important. Impeachment may well be the only path to justice. As you heard earlier on the show, Ms. Greene told us this today. Take a listen.
I had a meeting today with Kevin McCarthy in his office in the Capitol, and there is investigations that are being launched into Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland, and we're going to hunt that investigation as far as we can, and if it leads to impeachment, the Speaker is just fine with it.
All right, IRS whistleblowers appearing before the House Ways and Means Committee were astonished at the WhatsApp text message with Hunter Biden threatening one of his Chinese bankers and noting that his father, Joe, was, quote, sitting right next to him during the conversation. An assistant U.S. attorney apparently opined there was more than enough probable cause from that communication to search the guest house of the former Veep, but then pulled back on political grounds. And the FBI, which acted disgracefully with the Trump-Russian hoax episode, continues to act disgracefully during the Biden oversight investigations. And the FBI has finally allowed more than 1023 documents that are unclassified but totally redacted. This, of course, coming after the FBI denied there were any 1023 reports on the Bidens at all. Oversight Committee Chair James Comer is doing the Lord's work in his investigations and enforcing the FBI to at least acknowledge at least some evidence. Mr. Comer will continue his efforts, including this statement that he gave to us last night. Take a listen.
We're going to do everything we can to get the tapes, and yes, we can send people to foreign countries, and we will do that. We may have already done that.
All right, that's a very interesting statement. The evidence accumulating against the Bidens is now moving at warp speed. That's why the plain-speaking Taylor Greene is absolutely right to start preparing the way for impeachment proceedings.
Okay, so that was Larry Kudlow and his take on the Hunter Biden text. And again, that was all there was. There's nothing from CNN, nothing from MSNBC, NBC, ABC, etc., etc. So, you decide. Thank you. The number one reason why right-thinking Democrats, Blue Dog Democrats, Kennedy Democrats should become Republicans is because the Democrat Party no longer cares about you. Back in a minute. Thank you. I'm Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all of the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. And until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.